So I want to talk about Blackface today, and I'm only doing this after this Jimmy Fallon thing. This Jimmy Fallon news was broken, and I'm not really sure why comedians are getting in trouble for blackface. I mean, Dave Chappelle does whiteface all the fucking time. Well, when he was running the Chappelle show, at least he did whiteface. A lot of the time, I don't know how many times exactly, but there were many times. But come on to the skit as a white guy. And there was no problem with that. And there's been no actual problem with comedic blackface for decades, really. Probably even longer than decades. Now, look, I'm in South Africa. This country is coming out of apartheid less than 30 years ago. And let me tell you, there's a comedian here, legendary comedian. Okay, this is a legendary A-class comedian. He could probably go make comedy anywhere. Well, 10 years ago, he would have been able to make comedy anywhere. Nowadays, he probably can't make that comedy anywhere. Can probably only do it here in SA. But I digress. Leon Schuster. This is a legendary comic. You know, he makes racial comedy, just discussing any race, any race. White people, black people, colored people, Asians, if he can fucking get the makeup artist for it. And not once over the course of this guy's entire career have I ever heard, his blackface skits being offensive to anyone. I've never heard of that. I never heard of Dave Chappelle's whiteface skits being being offensive to anyone. I've never heard of any comic getting in trouble for blackface. But I guess now we're in the new era. This is hyper progressivism, and it's just hyper political correctness, and the political correctness is really overstepping here. Because there comes a point where, as soon as we start having to heavily police what comedians say, the truth of comedy suddenly falls away. Okay? When we have to police their skits, when we have to police all these random things, the creative process, okay? Like, a comedian is gonna say a lot of fucking offensive things in their creative process. It looks like we're approaching a stage where that is set to be policed. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how we distill truth once that is policed. So Jimmy Fallon, he's in trouble now for a blackface skit where he impersonated Chris Tucker or Chris Rock. I'm not really sure. I couldn't really care to do the research. I got to be honest with you there, because it's just completely ridiculous. The fact that it's even a news piece is completely ridiculous to me. And he's now in trouble. Now, I have no liking for Jimmy Fallon. I don't care about this comic. There's other comics that are just more exciting to me, more more funny, more hilarious to me than Jimmy Fallon. He's a really lukewarm comic to me. But there are people who appreciate his humor, his sense of humor. And now we are approaching a point where he is about to be lambasted for his sense of humor on a solitary skit which was performed 10 years ago, a decade ago. One, it has no relevance today. If people were upset about it, they should have complained about it as soon as it aired. Now, were there probably people upset about it? Yeah, probably. You could probably, get 10 black people in a room, show them the skit, and there'd probably be two people upset. Why they're upset, I don't really know. They take all these fucking issues too fucking seriously. But this still doesn't address that, there are that there are liberal nations, South Africa, where a comic has existed, had an entire career, become massively legendary off of strictly racial humor. I say strictly, it wasn't strictly racial humor, but a lot of it was racial humor, right? There was another skit, I forget the one. There was another skit, Schuster had, where he was, making a joke about the dick sizes of each race. And it was fucking hilarious. It was fucking hilarious. The Asian came in. He had an assistant being the nurse, and she was taking the measurements and Asians. Schuster would play all the different races, of course, right? Schuster would play the white guy, the black guy, the Asian, the colored, sundry. Of course, the black guy, he was supposed to have a massive slong. The white guy, whatever the fuck he did there, I stopped watching. I stopped watching at that point. I got a drink, I'm pretty sure. And the Asian guy had a small peepee, of course. And now no one complained about that in real time. No one complained about that. Everyone laughed. It was funny, haha. And even when Schuster involves, a civilian in his skits, an unknowing civilian, right? They might be a little baffled by what's going on, but as soon as the mask breaks, and, they see that it's Leon fucking Schuster in the fucking room with them, it's all smiles and giggles. Suddenly they realize, well, they're on TV. They might become famous off of this, right? Suddenly, whatever he was doing with the blackface, whatever he was doing with the makeup, falls away very quickly. And it never was even an issue in real time. Because watching it as the audience, you already led into the joke, right? That here's Schuster impersonating a black man, a colored man. He's making a fucking caricature of an Afrikaner or what have you. He's Afrikaans himself, Schuster. But he makes fucking caricatures of Afrikaans people as well. What's the most Afrikaans guy you can think of, right? Speaks broken English and all that shit. And no one got offended by that. Well, I guess, if you spread the hate out evenly, no one's gonna get angry. But I struggle to believe that in the States, Jimmy Fallon was making, just endless blackface skits. Never had anything to say about any other race of people, you know? And it was just black people being targeted. I struggle to believe that. I really struggle to believe that. And I really struggle to believe that it's offensive to anyone now in 2020. I mean, yeah, people are gonna hijack it for their own political aims, I suppose. But no one did that with Dave Chappelle and his whiteface skits. Everyone just laughed. That was good comedy. No one did that with Leon Schuster and his skits. Everyone just laughed. That was good comedy. But now there's all these power games to play with the progressives versus the ultra conservatives and sundry. Perhaps I fall on one side of that. Who the fuck knows? And rather than just let the comics, be comics, there's now a huge push to police the comedy. And I'm not too sure where we go from here. Yes, there were pushes for policing of the comedy before this, but now there's a prime time TV personality being attacked with these claims. And I have no dog in this fight. You gotta understand. I don't give a fuck about Jimmy Fallon. I've never watched the Jimmy Fallon show in my life. Okay, maybe not in my life, maybe twice or something. I don't know how many shows he's actually made in his entire lifetime. Probably more than 1,000. I've watched 2 shows. Right? Now, if you're gonna tell me that in his 1,000, 2,000 plus appearances on TV, what have you, he did a blackface skit this one time, the person who he was impersonating, a real celebrity, didn't get offended in real time. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that, pretty much served as free advertising for Chris Rock, I believe it was. That's free advertising. And here we are in 2020, 5-10 years removed from the skit airing, and suddenly the guy is in a whole lot of hot water for nothing, for genuinely nothing. And one other thing I'm actually pretty miffed about in recent times is, you got some kids, white kids, Asian kids, whoever. Though the Asians probably don't do this, I suppose. But you got these white kids. They go out to Halloween and they dance some blackface. I have no problem with that. Now, of course, I'm just one person on the internet, on the big wide internet, one person out of these 7 billion on this fucking wet rock. My opinion don't fucking matter. But really, I'm not offended by these things. And I'm really struggling to understand where people get off on this wild offensive tangent. Really I am. Because there's just comics trying to make comedy. You know, these people are trying to make people laugh. And they're discovering that, you know, not everything is fair game when you're trying to make people laugh. I'm pretty sure you couldn't tell a Jew joke in the year 2020 without being labeled an anti-Semite or something, right? Even if you're, making fun of really good traits that Jewish people have. I mean, Joe Rogan made this point. You can probably go, he's got too much content, I suppose, but he did make this point where you make a street joke about Jews, right? Two Jews walk into a bar, they buy it. It must be a good bar. It must be a fucking good bar. You know, I don't know any Jewish that makes bad business decisions. But oh well, if make a joke highlighting that Jews don't actually make bad business decisions because they think about where all the fucking money goes, then guess what? You're now an anti-Semite. And Jimmy Fallon now is probably being labeled a racist by the progressives for a blackface skit. For a blackface skit where the person who was impersonated doesn't actually give a fuck about the content of the skit. And there's just a whole lot of political pandering. I don't know who these progressives are pandering to. It's definitely not a conservative giving a shit about this at all. It's definitely not. So I don't know who these progressives are pandering to by pretending to be upset by all this shit. At least find a black person who's upset. Don't think you would. I really don't think you would. Because, most black people I know, you watch Dave Chappelle don his white face, make some comedy of the white man. No one had a problem with that. Even the white folk didn't have a problem with that. Everyone laughed. That was true comedy. But true comedy is dying art. And it's dying very quickly in this new decade. I'm not too sure. I don't think anyone's really sure. I'm not too sure how comedy actually moves forward from here. Because it seems to me that, comics used to have 100% of topics open to them. That's perhaps now down to 60% of topics are open to them. Now, of course, there are some comics who can, be more free with this, but that's only after they've proven to be funny. I don't see an amateur comic, getting politically spicy with their jokes because they can't do that anymore. If it lands badly, if it falls flat, suddenly they weren't making a joke, they were making racial commentary. That's how people will take it. And that's a very dangerous space to be in. That's a very, very not only for the comics, but just for the collective culture in general. Because, comics are arbiters of truth. A lot of truth is hidden in jest. A lot of truth is hidden in jest. And now that truth is set to be obfuscated. And when the comics are no longer allowed to speak truth, I'm not sure who is allowed to speak truth. Alright, that's all.